Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Today I am joined by Petra Cruz. She is a birth doula, VBAC educator, and mindset coach passionate about helping women reclaim their voice in birth and beyond. After three C-sections, she had an empowering VBAC. She now guides moms to trust their intuition, advocate for their choices, and birth on their terms. Through her journey to VBAC membership and podcast, she's creating a space where women feel informed, supported, and confident. When she's not talking birth, she's chasing her four kids around and dreaming of her next beach vacation. Me too. We skipped the beach last year because I was a billion weeks pregnant, and I literally cannot wait until we get to go this summer. So,
Yes.
Peter, thank you so much for joining me. Can you first tell us a little bit about what a VBAC is?
Absolutely. So thank you for having me. I'm just honored to be here. I love everything that you are doing. So to get into VBAC, yes, this is my wheelhouse. I could talk about VBAC all day. So if you are unaware, a VBAC is a vaginal birth after cesarean. And there's different iterations of this because you can have a vaginal birth after one cesarean, two cesareans. I've even heard, obviously, my story is I've had one after three cesareans, and I've even heard four and five cesarean VBACs. So, this is just like such a whole world of a different kind of birth that you may not have thought about because you always hear the phrase, once a cesarean, always a cesarean.
Mhm,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
So, if somebody has had to have cesareans before, but they would really like to birth vaginally and they would like to, have a VBAC and start exploring that option, what would be your recommendations for them to even get that process started or start having those conversations with their provider, even maybe whether they are currently pregnant or just planning for future pregnancies?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do is ask themselves why they want to have a VBAC. And there's no right or wrong answer here. I just feel like it's really important to figure out your deeply rooted why you even want to have this, because that can actually change your birth experience. Because if you don't know why you want this, then you're just going to kind of go along for the ride.
Mhm.
Which there's definitely nothing wrong with that, but I highly recommend just number one, figuring out why you want one, and then figuring out who in your area supports VBAC, because not everybody does. Everybody, and that can be from hospital to hospital in the same city
Mhm.
that, like in, for example, my city, that they don't support, there's one hospital that has actually a VBAC ban, and then there's another hospital that supports vaginal birth after two cesareans, and I gave birth there actually. So, um, it just totally depends on the person's wants for their birth experience, because you can also actually have a home birth. So you can decide to have a home birth after cesarean. And for that, you would have to find a home birth midwife that supports cesarean or vaginal birth after cesarean. So that could mean interviewing multiple providers. And I do also recommend just interviewing multiple providers, because not everybody has the same view on vaginal birth after cesarean, and figuring out which one is the right one for your unique circumstances. And there's no one right or wrong way, like with anything. Like if you feel more comfortable in the hospital, you feel comfortable having access to providers and potential emergency equipment because you're nervous about that, then absolutely give birth in the hospital. I don't think that you have to give birth at a certain place in order to feel good about your birth experience. There are so many different things that you can do, and educate yourself. So educate yourself on like what a vaginal birth even is. If you're a statistics person, go look at all the evidence, because there is amazing evidence that supports a vaginal birth after cesarean. And even going to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, so they actually do support vaginal birth after one cesarean, after two cesarean, and they are not opposed to it. They say it's a reasonable want for your birth experience. They encourage it as long as you're provider is on board, but even if they aren't, you are free to do whatever you want. So those are like the top three things that I would say are most important to start on your journey. And then you will kind of figure out what you need for your unique experience on your own journey because not everybody's the same and not everybody has the same wants or needs. And that's great because we're not cookie cutter people, so we should not have a cookie cutter birth plan or experience.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I know that, there are a lot of providers in my immediate area that are not open to VBAC. And, I've never had to have that conversation with those providers before because I have not found myself in that situation, but I have had friends that have tried to talk about this with their providers. And unfortunately, they haven't really been given a very good, what I feel like, explanation as to why. It's kind of just like automatic no, it's too risky. So I'm curious if you could shed any light on maybe, I understand that there probably are situations where it is risky and there are reasons that people kind of have a little bit of fear around VBAC. So I'm curious if you could shed light onto like what some of the risks are that people should consider.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're right because there are actually medical conditions where a cesarean may be warranted. Like if somebody has preeclampsia and they have really high numbers and, they're having situations where it's actually affecting their health or the health of their baby, then yes, I mean, that could be a scenario, but it's not like an end all be all, especially even with that specific scenario, because sometimes providers can um, like give you an induction or offer you an induction to try to have a vaginal birth. So that could be an option. This is obviously unique to where you live, who your provider is. But yeah, that is one of the scenarios. But I want to say like the biggest fear that is there is the fear of uterine rupture. And that is definitely the number one reason that providers typically tell you or warrant you against
Mhm.
having a vaginal birth. But I do want to kind of preface this with this is not a blanket statement. It shouldn't be a blanket statement because everybody has a unique body. Everybody's body healed uniquely from their previous cesarean. And, it depends on also like the reasoning of why they want a vaginal birth. Like, of course, there could be risks, but I feel like with everything, there are risks in life.
Mhm.
And it just depends on what you are okay with and not okay with, what you can accept and take radical responsibility over, because that is a big one. Because, during my personal journey, everybody told me, like, oh my gosh, your uterus is going to absolutely rupture. You're going to die. Your baby's going to die. And I had to come to terms with that potentially being a possibility, but I felt confident. I felt like I was deeply rooted in my why, and I felt like I was listening to my intuition and what my inner voice was telling me, and it was telling me, no, this is the right thing to do for me. And not everybody feels that way, and that's okay. If you feel more at peace with having a repeat cesarean, that's definitely okay. But I think knowing the actual evidence really can help people because if you have like that number one fear of uterine rupture, so the actual rate of uterine rupture is less than 1% in a person that has had one previous cesarean. So that is a 1% less than 1% chance of a uterine rupture actually happening.
Wow.
And after two cesareans, it goes from like 1.4% to a 1.8% chance of uterine rupture. There's not a whole lot of evidence about, vaginal birth after cesarean uterine rupture rate for 3 plus, but there is starting to become more information because more people are having them. So, just realizing what the actual statistics are, the evidence is, and remembering to take that evidence also with a grain of salt because it is heavily nuanced. It depends on whether you're giving birth at home and you have little to no interventions, or you're giving birth at the hospital where you're being given Pitocin, you are having an epidural. There's so many different factors that are actually not included in these studies. So I honestly believe that these numbers could be even lower than
Yeah.
what they are perceived to be, depending on the circumstances of the people. So the Success rate. I hate to use the success term because it's not like you fail if you don't have a VBAC, but the terms they use are the success rate of vaginal birth after cesarean is actually anywhere from 60% to 80% in the hospital. And the numbers are still coming out for like a home birth after cesarean, but it's anywhere from 70% to 95%,
Wow.
which is just incredible seeing those numbers start to come out. So, yeah, I mean, if you feel really strongly about having a VBAC, I think that definitely explore your options because there are options out there. And if you're curious, like on how to get started, just start asking questions, start talking to people, start listening to podcasts, start reaching out to your local mom group on Facebook and ask anybody if they've had a vaginal birth after cesarean in your area. I think those are amazing places to start on your journey.
That's you just shared such a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so grateful for it because, I don't know a lot about VBACs myself personally, but um I think it's so interesting, and I could get on like a whole soapbox probably about informed consent and how sometimes providers use statistics or information and kind of I don't know that I want to say they twist them, but they definitely like frame them in a way that is on their side, whichever side that they may be on. And I feel like that does us as women such an injustice in, like you said, like letting us kind of intuitively feel what we're led to do. Like, yes, absolutely. They are experts. We want their opinion, we want their input. But at the end of the day, we do, as women, need to lean into our own intuition and our desires and our why for things. I think it's such an important point you made that women should examine why it is that they really want to do a VBAC because in that exploration, I feel like some people could find that it's maybe not even their own desire for for a VBAC and more just like this societal pressure sometimes around vaginal births. And, I personally think that we're all moms, and regardless of how babies come into the world, you still went through 9 months of pregnancy typically, and you've still worked hard to get your baby here, and you're just as much of a mom as anybody else. And but I know that not everybody buys into that, and that's very, very unfortunate and puts a lot of pressure on moms. And unfortunately, I feel like that takes away sometimes from the joy of becoming a mom, whether it be the first time or the fourth time, regardless of how, your sweet little baby comes into the world. So I know that
Yeah.
I know you have a membership all
Mhm.
about VBAC and the journey to, I mean, that's literally the name of the membership. So can you kind of touch on what all you do in the membership and like what kind of resources are in there? I can see sending like people that ask me about VBAC or I know that want VBAC, sending them there because I think that it's a area of knowledge that not a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to, before I get into that, I want to touch back on what you said about like the providers,
Mhm.
because in no way am I bashing like hospitals or doctors or, anything like that. I love them. I absolutely feel like there is a place for them.
Mhm.
But I feel like you got to also remember like they could have experienced some type of traumatic experience with a previous client. And so they're basing their decisions on your birth, not
Mhm.
on your unique circumstances, but on previous circumstances that they may have gone through. So I just want to leave that there because I love OBs, I love nurses. They definitely have a place and they can be amazing. I've supported births where they have just been so supportive. So just nothing malicious about them, I could say, and they're also under time constraints. They have to follow rules and regulations, policies that are put in place by hospitals. So just keeping that in mind when you are deciding on what to do with your journey. And that's exactly why I call my membership and my podcast the Journey to VBAC. And it's because to me, it's not so much how your baby is born, it's about the journey that it took you from the beginning until you gave birth and even beyond that, because, the birth is absolutely important. But the postpartum season lasts so much longer than the birth that absolutely is important too. So in my membership, I give you like I give you the whole thing because I know that there's people that love the evidence side of things.
Mhm.
So I give the actual evidence of VBAC, the history of VBAC, but then I also go into more so of like the intention, and I go into how to prepare mentally, not just physically, but mentally. Because if you're not prepared mentally for this journey, then it could be really hard. And, when I was preparing, it was so hard to do everything because I didn't have like a clear, concise way to plan or prepare for my VBAC. I was all over the place. I would literally research for hours every single day. But that helped me because now I have this wealth of knowledge in my head, and now I've been able to put it in a clear, concise, step-by-step way for moms that are women that are preparing for their own VBAC, and they can take what they want and leave what they don't, because I know that not everything that I have in there will resonate 100% with everybody. And there's also a community aspect. So once they get in there, there's going to be a full course on how to prepare mentally, emotionally, physically, like all aspects. And then I have a monthly expert who's like an OB, a nurse. I have a somatic therapist coming in, doulas. Like there's so many experts, and I have one per month that's going to speak on one specific subject that we can just dive deeper in on that specific month. And then there's also the community where they can literally talk to other women who are on the same exact journey that they are, the journey to VBAC. So they get to commune, ask questions, and just connect with other women who are all around the world. So I'm just like so excited about this. And, if obviously anybody has any questions about it, they can absolutely direct message me on like Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Birthing Come True, so they can send me a message if they're curious about anything else. Because I don't want somebody to join if it doesn't resonate with them. I'm not here to just like get all the members. No, I want to build like a community of women who are very like-minded.
I think that's so incredible. Okay, so before we wrap up, have I have I skipped over anything? Is there anything that you feel like is important to share that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I think the only thing I feel like we touched on a lot because I can just talk all day about this, but I think the important thing is to figure out just what you want to do. Not what your doctor wants to do, not what anybody on Instagram or Facebook is telling you what to do, with what you want to do. Because ultimately, we are the ones that are going to live with our decisions. We're going to live with the consequences, the benefits. We're going to live with all of that. Not our doctor, not our cousin, not our grandma who's telling us not to do this because I had all that. You just have to be deeply rooted in why you want to do this and if it's the right thing for you. So I think that is just like the most important thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I know that you have a resource that I'm going to be sharing in the show notes with the audience. Do you care to tell them a little bit about that and kind of what all they get with the resource?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have this resource. It is a VBAC roadmap. And obviously, I'm sure you will put the link in the show notes. But you can just get on my email list and it'll send it to you for free. And once you get it, it's going to step by step tell you what the main most important things to focus on. And I give you in there like a little snippet of how to start doing it so that you can start taking steps literally today. And I don't want to overwhelm you with everything. So, I just want you to take these steps in there, take this roadmap and do what you will with it. And just let me know how it works out for you because I am here, I feel like, to help. I feel so led to just be of service and connect with other women so they don't feel alone because sometimes this journey can feel so alone. And we're not meant to walk this journey alone. We're meant to be in community with other women who can support us through this because it's not hard. I mean, it's not easy, it's hard.
Yeah, for sure.
And it feels easier when you have people who support you on your journey.
Absolutely. Now, I know you mentioned that you're on Instagram, but is there anywhere else that people can find you or a website they should go to? Anything else that they want to come and connect with you and learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, like you said, I have my Instagram and that's at Birthing Come True. And I definitely am in my DMs responding to messages. So that would be the first place. And then I do have my website that is birthingcometrue.com. And the reason for the name is because my birth came true. It's like a dream come true. My birth came true. So it's birthing come true. And I mean, pretty much anywhere you can find me under that name. I do have YouTube. I have my podcast. That's the Journey to VBAC podcast. And then obviously my membership is the Journey to VBAC membership.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today to chat about all of this and educating me and everybody that's listening. I appreciate it so much. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Thank you.